So that's the end of the first round. I don't actually remember how I beat that guy, but I can guarantee you I did. So this next guy has a much higher 3-bet percentage, opens just as much, has very similar c-betting tendencies, just very high c-bet, reasonable turn and river c-bet. So again, I'm not going to be giving up too much on the flop, and probably lean towards floating when I do fight back. And he's raising c-bets 30%, so just very upfront aggro. So I'm going to be, looking to combat that by kind of like protecting my ranges like on early streets, and then just like sort of attacking him on later streets. So he makes so this is an interesting spot. First of all, I would probably c-bet half pot on this drive board. I don't really know why I bet this big, especially because he folds 60% on the flop. So he makes a small raise. This is just a really shitty spot with a weak king because we don't beat any value hands, but we're kind of forced to continue because our hand is just, extremely strong. We're going to be c-betting this flop all the time. And he's not always going to barrel turn and river. I would actually argue that he's very rarely going to bet the river once we call flop and call turn. So that's pretty much why I just take this line as a standard. I call turn, I fold river. Yes, everything misses. Yes, I have top pair. But he could still be value betting king jack and king queen, and my kicker doesn't play. He can still have every 4, and I just think that like a lot of missed draws once I call the turn are just going to assume that I have a king and just give up their hand. So I think that's actually a fairly easy fold. So he opens 2.5x. We 3-bet aces, of course. Okay, so this was an interesting spot. So here, with a lot of money behind, playing someone who's probably not, entirely used to playing heads up. I actually don't know who this guy might be a heads up reg, but I assume that most people I play during Scoop or whatever tournament series are just like MTT players. C-betting the flop is still extremely standard. The board's not so ugly that it's going to run out poorly for us. We'll still be able to get 3 streets of value very, very often. But on a 7 turn, I actually think there's a lot of merit in checking. First of all, because he'll never expect me to check a hand this strong, so he might even value bet like any pair to sort of protect against ace high and draws and try and get a little extra value out of me. And at the same time, if he floated the flop with like 10-8 or 10-9, or even just like king queen of hearts or something, I'm giving those hands an opportunity to bluff. Which they should by all means take, because this is a situation where a lot of people would give up on their bluffs. So he does bet half pot, and fairly obviously I think the only play is to call. There's absolutely no way we're trying to get stacks in here. We're just trying to sort of bluff catch and get him to value cut himself a little bit without betting into a 7 and then getting shoved on the river, because that would be like pretty disastrous. And then he bets 1250 on the river. I mean, it's likely a thin value bet, but I still don't think we can raise. It's impossible for us to represent a bluff because we check called the turn. So it's really just like a situation where even though we're almost always ahead, we can't really afford to raise, because the few times that he's inducing with like 10-9 or a7 or whatever, then we're going to get stacked. But he was value cutting himself with 10-8, which is, a perfect result that he bet this hand on the turn. And his value bet on the river, like, to be honest, it's really transparent. If I had, I would never have pocket 5s or anything like that in this situation, but if I had like ace deuce or even like 6-5 or something, and I decided to check call the turn, there's no way I would pay off his river bet, because it's just so transparent, always a thin value bet, always one of those spots where, especially on this river, where he's just like clearly not bluffing and clearly not trying to make you fold because of his bet size. So like, honestly, just the type of play that I love playing against it, but I just strongly disapprove of it.